Welcome to another Spa Sharp, where we come together as girlfriends to encourage each other to stay sharp spiritually, physically, and attitudinally. We've talked about the gut-brain axis, and today we're going to talk about the muscles-brain axis and how exercise is healthy for the brain. By understanding how the muscle-brain axis works, I feel like it'll give you purpose in your workout. So you know that you're not just working to lose weight and for good heart health, but for good brain health. So we get together and we share ideas, girlfriends sharpening girlfriends. Our verse is Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpens iron as one friend sharpens another. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that I have been reading, researching, and learning about. I want to start by talking about myokines. Your brain cells have this notion of supply and demand. It's under so much demand every day, from stress to environmental stress, work stress. But if you have a large supply through ketones, sleep, exercise, and nutrition, you are going to be able to meet those demands. But if you do not have a large supply, that's when we experience synaptic loss and neurodegradation. Myokines are the muscle-based proteins that refer to your muscles as the pharmacy and the myokines as the medication. Myokines are stored in the muscle, waiting to be used. Myokines are released under contractions. So you contract your bicep and myokines go into the bloodstream, and they have multiple effects on immunity, on cancer, and on brain health. Now, exercise is the most important tool that we have for preventing neurological issues. But we also need to look at sleep, nutrition, and lifestyle habits. But today we're going to primarily focus on exercise. So everything that you do, every choice you make is going to change your epigenetics. The brain is the most vascular-rich organ in the body. It houses the most blood vessels per organ in the body, which means it's a hungry organ. We get blood flow to the brain through the heart, and exercise and cognition are connected. Now, there are many articles that have been published finding what's good for the heart is good for the brain, and we want to get into a little of that today. So if you can maintain this cardiovascular rich lifestyle, then we know that you're benefiting the brain in many ways. Now, there's a few different types of exercise that we want to hit on today. Aerobic exercise, resistance training, and neurocognitive exercises. Now, all zones and types serve a purpose for the brain and the heart. Zone 1 is what I'm doing right now. I'm sedentary, I'm sitting. It's your activities of daily living, just moving throughout the day. It's still healthy for you, but you're only in Zone 1. Zone 2 is more of your aerobic exercise, your long bouts of exercise, which is more like when we get together and we do like a 60-minute or 45-minute workout, maybe 3 times a week is beneficial. And that does offer benefits for the brain. Research has also shown that you can grow new neurons in the hippocampus when your heart rate is at about that 65% of your maximum heart rate. So that's good for you. But when we get up into that zone 5, that's your maximal aerobic exercise, when you're hitting your peak, when it's that hard aerobic pace. It's exercise where you're huffing and puffing. It's what's going to feed your brain the oxygen-rich blood nutrients. And in Spa Ministry, I try to get you to that point when we're doing our cardio drumming or when we're doing intervals in the park. I'm like, just push it to the top of the hill. From this pavilion to the next one, go, go, go. That's some of your zone 5 that is healthy for you. So when we're doing aerobic activity, we're feeding our brain with BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDNF is produced during our aerobic activity. BDNF is a growth factor, a neurotrophin as well, and it helps with the growth and proliferation of neurons. BDNF is a myokine, that muscle-based protein. And hormones get secreted from the muscle during this maximal exercise when released. So BDNF helps with synapses. Kind of neuroscience 101. Your brain is about 3.5 pounds. It has about 87 billion neurons. The neuron is our chief brain cell. It's the only electrical active brain cell. Per neuron, we get about 5 to 10,000 connections. And the connections are via little legs called dendrites. Remind you of high school science? Once they communicate with one another, they produce the synapse, and that's how we think, we process information, we have sound thoughts, we talk, and we move. So brain fog, neurodegeneration, dementia, Alzheimer's disease, these occur because those connections are lost. But we can grow new connections per neuron in the hippocampus as we exercise and we utilize our BDNF. So the hippocampus is deep in the temporal lobes behind the ear, and the hippocampus is the first structure to go during neurodegeneration. But aerobic physical activity can grow new neurons and connections of the neurons in the sub-regions of the hippocampus. And we can make the hippocampus bigger in volume. The hippocampus is primarily involved in our memory formation and learning. In dementia, we see loss of episodic memory and the loss of our short-term memory. For example, where did I leave my keys? What is that person's name? What's the name of that street? Or what did I come in here for? But we can slow the progression and the onset of this disease through exercise. Remember, what's good for the heart is good for the brain. And since the heart is delivering the oxygen and the nutrients to the brain via blood flow, we have to ensure that the heart and the cardiovascular system is strong, durable, and really flexible with great elasticity. Cardiologist Ben Levine, he showed over a 2-year period a reversal of 20 years in the hearts of 50-year-old participants measured by echocardiogram after max aerobic activity. I'm in my 50s. What that means, if for 2 years, if I was involved in the study, at the end, I would have the heart of a 30-year-old. Fabulous. Yes, I'd like to have the heart of a 30-year-old. So at age 30, those of you girlfriends who are still in your 30s, that's when you begin to get the stiffening of the arteries, which means not a lot of blood flow can go through them. We also get the left ventricular hypertrophy, which supplies the blood to the body. So maximum aerobic activity will open up the arteries to get the blood flow to the brain. So girlfriend, that's why I say just give it a little push. Come on, get into that zone 5. So what in the research, what they have shown is ideal is sets of 4. You do 4 minutes on, 4 minutes off of complete rest. So when you get to that 4th set, you actually feel like nauseous, like I'm not gonna make it. The way I do it here is I run the stairs and I just push it all the way up and then come down. Similar to a HIIT workout, but this 4 for maximum push and rest is different than the HIIT because we're trying to get that VO2 max. VO2 max is measured of your peak cardiorespiratory fitness. So you can raise your VO2 max with a HIIT, but the 4x4 research has shown it will raise your VO2 max tenfold. So every once in a while, maybe once a week, once a month, join us, give it a try to do this 4-on-4. That to get that sheer force of blood shunting through your body at maximal efforts. Imagine like a tube of hose, like your garden hose. And that's what's going through your arteries when you're at maximal zone. We need to push it through like you're watering the garden. Next, I want to talk about resistance training, because we get out our bands, our tubes, and that's healthy. There's a reason why on occasion in spa health, spa ministry, we will offer resistance bands. So you actually release more myokines in resistance training. Okay, think about the brain. Think about our science classes. We had gray matter and white matter in the brain. The gray matter is predominantly our cortex that houses our cell bodies. The white matter is the myelination axons of the neurons. So the greater size and volume as it relates to the brain is more connections between the brain visible on neuroimaging. They've seen this. Neuropsychologist Luisa Nicola authored a wonderful paper that showed resistance training can slow the decline of mild cognitive impairment. Statement has been made. People who have bigger quads have bigger brains. What does that mean? She explains it like this in her SMART study and the brain power study. What they saw is whether you've got mild cognitive impairment or not, through resistance training twice a week, which we are going to offer resistance bands on the dock. Hope you can come. You can increase the gray matter volume and decrease white matter lesions. So white and gray matter changes happen through the myokines. Remember, the myokines are our muscle-based proteins. The muscles are the pharmacy, and the myokines are the medications. Myokines are stored in the muscle, waiting to get released, and they get released under that contraction. So when you contract your bicep, the myokine gets released, goes into the bloodstream, and we have receptors on all our organs, like the heart and the brain have receptors to these myokines. And they also have effect on the immunity, on cancer, which I'll share with you a little bit later, and on our executive functioning. Our executive functioning, it lives in the prefrontal cortex, our frontal lobe of the brain. It's the CEO of the brain, and it's responsible for our functioning, such as our thinking, our processing speed, our memory, and our intellect. So the myokines can be messenger molecules. And these myokines help deliver our BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factors, and help them to express themselves. So the good news is everybody has myokines, even people who are sedentary. Yes, my mother-in-law has myokines. Sadly, if someone doesn't exercise, they just don't use their myokines. They just sit there. Imagine having all this natural medicine and not using it to heal yourself. They're just sitting there. They're just waiting, but they do not get released until you move the muscle, till you form that contraction, which is why they say when you do squats, that's a bigger muscle, and you're gonna get more myokines released. So just to give you a picture of how important these myokines are, pharmaceutical companies are spending billions of dollars trying to mimic myokines. The New York Post recently released an article stating that they're trying to configure an exercise pill. They're really trying to replicate BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, in a pill, but they just can't. Back to the bigger the muscle, the bigger the brain. I want to tell you the best exercise, the biggest muscle to use is our quads, and that's why squats are important. And when you come to one of our workouts, I want to talk to you about how getting heavy weights and doing those squats, just a few, is good for you. So there's more muscle fiber and more muscle cells in the quads than in the biceps, for example. And more myokines, therefore squats are your optimal exercise. What's recommended is 80% of 1 repetition max. So you find out what your max is, and then you go to 80% of what that is. And I do 5 minutes, 5 sets, upper body with a squat. And I'll teach you how to do that at one of our sessions. A second indicator is our grip strength. As an occupational therapist, we'd use the dynamometer, where we would have them squeeze the lever and you could see what their grip strength was. And they have found that this is an indicator of your brain health. I know that if you come to cardio drumming, your grip strength is good. I have seen my grip strength increase the more I do cardio drumming. If you want to increase your grip strength in the gym, the best exercise to do, sometimes I call them suitcases. It's where you pick up heavy weights and you just walk across the floor with them. Now, overall strength training not only does things like prevent falls, increasing your muscle mass, but it increases your brain size and strengthens the neuromuscular system, which I want to get into next. The reason we can lift and push and do things with our body is not because of your muscles. It's because of your brain and the connections of the neuromuscular system at the neuromuscular junction. When your brain sends a signal down to your upper motor neuron or your lower motor neurons in order to lift heavy things, if you stop doing that, it's a lose it if you don't use it. If you stop doing that, you lose that signaling from the brain. And it's very hard to recruit neuromuscular signaling back again. So use it, don't lose it. We can slip into cognitive decline because we stop engaging in things that are hard or difficult for us. So that's why in spa ministry, we're like, I know it's tough, I know it's hard, but keep doing it. So resistance training with bands is excellent for overall health. The great news is the more sedentary and the less fit you are, the greater benefit you're going to get. So 70-year-olds who have never lifted weights before are getting the same benefit as a fit, regular exercise individual would be in terms of percentage. From like a 70-year-old could do a wall squat, air squats, just walking, just get up and move, especially your quads. The theory is you've just got to start, or always keep going, never stop. Want to get back to our brain health. We talked about exercise and our myokines. Also want to hit on mitochondria. These improve brain health. Now we have dementia. I've spent several years because my passion is brain health. And dementia is the umbrella term that's used to categorize Parkinson dementia, Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia, and Alzheimer's. Now, Alzheimer's is the most prominent form of dementia. And 20 years ago, Alzheimer's disease was called amyloid cascade hypothesis. And that's because in Alzheimer's disease cases, or in neuroimaging, a buildup of a certain protein was called amyloid beta was visible. And in the presence of innate immune system in our brain, for example, your brain is telling you you're under attack. And the immune system, a normal innate immune system, will say, let's release amyloid beta, which is a protective molecule. That's good. It protects our brain against attacks from the outside world. And so amyloid plaque is helpful. It shields the brain from these insults. But there is a buildup of unnecessary amyloid beta plaque in dementia. We can eliminate some of this amyloid beta plaque through BDNF released with exercise. So I get normal amyloid from stressors, but then I clear out my brain. It's when you let that beta amyloid unnecessarily build up that you start to get that brain fog. Research findings state myokines assist to improve mitochondria efficiency as it relates to cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease. An additional way to prevent unnecessary buildup, good sleep. So we want to just spend a few minutes just reminding you how for brain health you need good sleep. You need good deep sleep and REM sleep, because that's when the cleanup process occurs. So now within brain health and dementia, big term, there is subjective cognitive decline, mild cognitive impairment, and then Alzheimer's. We talked about beta amyloid, but I also want to talk about tau. Plaques is also characterized by another protein called tau, T-A-U, that builds up in the neurofibrillary of the axon. When tau aggregates, it forms a tangle, and it collapses the axon of the cell body. Two things are happening here. You've got the protein building up inside the cell, and then you've got this amyloid, which is outside the cell. And if it's outside of the cell, it doesn't allow for the proper functioning of these two cells to communicate with each other. So you're losing synapses. You're losing those dendrites over time. And the amyloid starts to become sticky and form more plaques. But remember, before the amyloid becomes sticky, that's when our BDNF is circulating through the blood and the brain stem, serving and protecting the brain. You can eliminate this amyloid. So during our deep sleep, that's our delta wave sleep, our theta is our REM sleep, that's when you're clearing, street cleaners are coming out and cleaning the amyloid, as well as other environmental toxins, air pollutants, microplastics, everything that's building up in your brain, that stress and insult. Deep sleep, clean them up. Hey, let's hit on the microplastics for just a little bit. I was disappointed, shocked that when I did my mycotoxins test, I was good on some of the metals and mercuries and things that I had focused on removing, but I even had the high levels of microplastics because they're getting into our foods, our drinking water, so many things. So side note about microplastics, they build up in the brain. What is shocking and disappointing is they're now finding that the microplastics can cross that blood-brain barrier, which is scary to think that it's getting into the brain. We need that blood-brain barrier to keep out what needs to be out and keep in what needs to be in and let the important things through. So during our slow wave sleep, our brain acts like this washing machine. Our cerebral spinal fluid washes the brain and takes with it the debris and the amyloid beta. So sleep is the best time to clean the brain. Oh, here's another side note. Alcohol is bad for the brain. The active ingredient of alcohol is ethanol, which is a toxin, a neurotoxin, and a cell toxin. And it basically turns in acetaldehyde, which is a weed killer. Really? Oh. So it poisons your body, it poisons your cell, killing the gray matter of your brain, leading to volume loss. So let's just try to stay away from alcohol because we just don't want any more white matter lesions. I don't. I know you don't. EMGs and electromyography can test the axon, test conduction velocity against actual neurons, and test how long it takes you to produce a muscle contraction or a thought, or test the myelin. So in multiple sclerosis, EMGs may show a complete conduction block or slow conduction velocity. That means the white matter is either deteriorating or it's just completely gone. So when you drink, getting back to alcohol, you are forming little lesions within the white matter, that myelin sheath of the axon, and you're slowing down the conductivity or the velocity of your thoughts, of your information, your processing speed, and your movements. We don't want that. We want to be quick, accurate. I told you I'd mention something that I read about cancer. Aerobic-based exercise can reduce your risk of several types of cancers. Yeah. So in cancer research, we see a tumor in stage 1 cancer that has formed in a specific site of the body. The tumor may metastasize as pieces of the tumor break off, called circulating tumor cells. I'm not an oncologist. I'm just telling you as a girl from what I'm reading. Research shows that through maximal aerobic exercise, we can get rid of those circulating tumor cells through that sheer force of blood. Shunting through the system, cancer cells can die off. So these myokines, they send signals to natural killer cells, and these natural killer cells dampen the circulating tumor cells and stop the tumor cells from progressing. So we want to be preventative cancer, and if cancer's in there, let's fight it. So sadly though, tumor cells are alive. That means that they form their own vascular system. So we have to kill off that site and the vascular system. So in order to kill off the actual tumor and stop it from going to stage 1 to stage 2, research is stating that maximal aerobics is a way to increase our brain health, increase our heart health, and be anti-cancer medication. So they say include exercise in your cancer protocol. Another way that's good for your brain health is that's also exercise related, only on the other end of the pendulum, is your breath work and resonance frequency breathing, which is like your 4 to 5 breaths a minute. I would love to talk to you about that more sometime soon too. It has shown wonders on your heart rate variability and your stress level. I think a lot of you already know about heart rate variability, but I'll share with you a little bit of information. Heart rate variability is a measure of how fit and recovering we are. I track my HRV with my sleep with my Oura ring. HRV, heart rate variability, is the time between your heartbeat intervals. It's your variation between your sympathetic, your fight and flight, and your parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest. You need a variability, but you need the highs and the lows. You can't stay in high all the time, and you can't stay low all the time. So let's get our highs and let's get our lows. So throughout the day, we want that high variation actively engaged in our sympathetic, and then we need our rest and digest. And the sympathetic is activated when you're running, like they used to say, running from a tiger. When we're stressed, when you're at the gym. So it can be both good and bad, because we know that a little stress on the body is good, but we also need that parasympathetic. For a good, healthy cardiovascular system, you want to be flexible between the two. HRV is a measure of how flexible your cardiometabolic system is. If you have a low heart rate variability, again, that means you're not getting the variations. So one of the best ways of helping your heart rate variability is through resonance, frequency breathing, and good quality sleep. Let's jump to nutrition. We talked about exercise, sleep. Let's get into nutrients that affect the cardiovascular system, our neural pathways, and cognitive functioning of the brain. So again, we talked about that the brain is only 3.5 pounds. It's only about 2% of your total body weight, but it consumes about 20% of your total calories that we ingest. The brain is a hungry and a selfish organ. Your brain thrives on antioxidants and polyphenols. Your fruits and vegetables, again, your berries, your blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, your leafy greens, the choline that we get from eggs, Selenium, it needs selenium, maybe from Brazilian nuts. These can help eradicate the oxidative stress. Your omegas, your EPA, DHA, ALA, your total lipid components in your brain, which is about 20% of the total fat components of the brain. Because your brain is composed of pretty fat, it's pretty much fat. It's made of the DHA. Your DHA comes from your fatty fish, your clean Alaskan fresh salmon, and your smaller fish. If you do not know how your omega level is, I got mine tested through my blood test. You can find out how your omegas are. You want it to be about an 8% or more. I've given a whole talk on creatine, but I wanted to bring it back in here because it's great for the brain and it helps with that cell energy metabolism. So within the cell, we mentioned that we have the mitochondria, which produce the ATP, and which is the main energy current of the cell, adenosine triphosphate. So when you eat food, it gets broken down into pieces, and then it goes through the mitochondria, which we use the mitochondria for energy to produce more energy, and the creatine, it just helps with this process. I take 5 grams after my workout. I'm doing it for brain health. If you're doing a brain marathon, you may want to do 5 milligrams in the morning and 5 in the afternoon. Different protocols for what your goal is. But studies have shown the effects of creatine as a neuroprotective molecule. It protects the neurons against this insults such as head trauma. Here in the NFL, don't speak for them, but research has been shown that some NFL athletes are currently in studies where they are dosing them prior to games with 20 grams of creatine. Just telling you what I'm reading. But you and I are not getting hit in the head. We don't know that we're going to a game, we're going to get hit in the head a lot, so I don't need that much. But so I'm going to take a lower dose. But we do know that it acts as a protective barrier for the cells when they're going through stress. We all have stress. Other examples of stress, maybe a stroke, even a headache or migraine is an insult. Like we mentioned, we get insults everywhere we go, in the toxins of the air and the fabrics of my furniture here. But creatine can also help with bone mass density, which is another reason why I'm doing it, because I want to keep my lean muscle mass. Also what age you are. We see women postmenopausal developing osteopenia, and creatine will help with that bone mass density. Let's get into that third one. We talked about aerobic and the maximal aerobic exercise. We talked about resistance training. And then I mentioned I wanted to say something about neurocognitive exercises. And sneak peek, this is pickleball. For my girlfriends that are joining me now for pickleball. Okay, so neurocognitive exercises, it requires a functioning brain. So this is more than your nature walk. We're gonna be doing something. This is cardio drumming. It stimulates your cognitive performances. You're gonna engage your eyesight, your reaction time, and your hand-eye coordination. So you might be practicing right-handed throws, left-handed throws, standing on one foot. You may patch an eye, blacking out one side, half of your brain, throwing the ball on the wall. I've done a lot of wall ball. Partner exercise, where you're throwing the ball to each other. I mean, a lot of youth do this naturally in basketball, football, softball, soccer, but in my 50s, I'm not doing it anymore, so I have to force myself to keep neurocognitive exercises. But when you come to postural bar, I do work on this with your balance, which is neurocognitive. We'll be standing on one foot, doing postural exercises. Why am I asking you to come to postural bar? Because we're activating the cerebellum. And you don't have to do it every day, but Spa Ministry, Spa Health offers, from your resistance band to your cardio drumming to our postural bar, do it either 5 minutes a day or once a week or every other week. Also, brain games. I have apps on my phone, and if I'm going for a nature walk or walking the stairs or anywhere, I encourage myself to do my math or my brain games so that you're using the brain as you're walking in that zone 2 state or zone 1, however fast you're walking. Neurocognitive. So, I also wanted to throw in here for brain health some health modalities that we offer at Spa Health. Sauna, red light therapy, I've done hyperbaric oxygen therapy, cold plunge. These are all so good for your brain. Your sauna, it eliminates toxins. I've often talked about nitric oxide. It increases the blood vessels dilate, increases the blood flow. We've talked about heat shock proteins. They actually mimic cardiovascular activity. So you're sitting in the sauna and your heat shock proteins think you're exercising and you're sweating the toxins out. Remember, what's good for the heart is good for the brain. So these heat shock proteins, they can affect us at the DNA level. Research has shown that we can eliminate the aggregates of the tau proteins and the amyloid beta by getting into a hot state. So heat shock proteins challenge our mitochondria. One thing to note here is I have to do my cold plunge I always do it after my sauna. I jump in, which is good because you wash off the toxins. You don't want to do your hot sauna and then reabsorb. If you can, take a shower, use castile soap, get those toxins out so you don't reabsorb them. We talked earlier about the blood-brain barrier. I want to bring that up again, that the blood-brain barrier is like a protective shield for the brain. And one neuropsychologist compared it to like a bouncer at the club. So you want that blood-brain barrier to monitor who can come in and who stays out. And if you're in a healthy state, that blood-brain barrier will function correctly because it's just cells bound together by tight junctions. But as you're exposed to stress, pollutants, water, air, high glucose diets. You see people getting this type 2 diabetes. What they're doing actually is they're degrading their blood-brain barrier and it becomes permeable and leaky. And they open up these gap junctions, allowing for passive diffusion of large toxic molecules in the brain. So we want to be able to protect the blood-brain barrier and the blood vessels. And those little capillaries, they're only 1 cell thick. So they're pretty weak, but they do a lot of work. So capillaries is what's supplying the blood to different neurons in the brain. And capillaries are the first thing to go in hypertension. If you're not looking at your blood pressure, and the gold standard is 120/80, and we gotta get good blood pressure. We don't want that hypertension. So if the pressure, we don't want kill these little capillaries and damage that blood-brain barrier, allowing unwanted molecules to enter. But also, we do live in a stressful world, so I just want to red flag social media. Let it be healthy, not unhealthy for you. It can have a negative impact on the brain. We talked about our sauna, our cold water immersion. The reason cold water immersion is good is because it protects the brain through mitochondrial biogenesis. So when you're under extreme hypothermia temperatures, your brain says, okay, she's under attack. She's super cold. She's going to freeze to death. What do we do? So we have to warm her up. So the mitochondria really get to work. And so when you do these cold plunges, you're just training your mitochondria to think, we don't have enough, we have to produce more. So let's trick our mitochondria. Just 3 minutes, just do 3.5 minutes of a cold plunge with me. It'll be great. It's easier with a partner. I just play my 3-minute song and then you're done. So, ideally they say it should be at 42 degrees Fahrenheit. I was at 50 degrees and I was miserable. I don't think I want to go any colder. Props to you friends out there that can do it colder than that, but it depends on how cold adapted you are. Florida friends, we're not very cold adapted. So cold immersion provides vasoconstriction where your blood vessels constrict and you produce a robust amount of norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is your neurochemical, your neurotransmitter, and the hormone noradrenaline. That's what gives you vigilance and drive. I mean, friends tell us, oh, I feel so energetic after my cold plunge. I mentioned the hyperbaric, which is fabulous, wonderful. Wish I owned a chamber. Money wasn't an issue. I'd invite all my girlfriends over to get in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, because that's where you're getting your 100% oxygen to the brain. Your red light therapy we mentioned, that's penetrating the superficial organs, collagen production, and more. Now, if you want to do some brain tests, there's a few that I can offer. I can refer you to what I've done. Strategene, looking at your APO status, will give you information about your brain and what you need. You can do a blood test, a full lipid panel. They can detect up to 50 biomarkers, including your ApoB or your Lp(a). I've also done urine tests. You can have a functional medicine doctor help you go through heavy metals. I can read it with you, looking at toxic metal exposure. We talked about the VO2 max test to measure how fit you are and different zone levels. A DEXA scan. I think a lot of us are already doing the DEXA scan to measure your muscle mass, your bone mineral density, your bone mass, and any asymmetries you may have. And I think, girlfriends, if we just connect to be iron sharpening iron, encouraging each other, understanding why Spa Health offers the fitness and the health we do, I think we're just going to get younger and younger every day. And I'm so thankful to have girlfriends to encourage each other, building each other up so that we can reflect his image and be salt and light for him. So God bless you.